Welcome, friends of the Retina Channel Podcast, to another episode of this series. I'm your host, Dr. Kevon Kushan from Toronto, Canada, and today I have the privilege of having Dr. Christina Weng on the show for you folks today. Dr. Weng joins us from Houston, Texas, from Baylor College of Medicine. You may know her from many of her works in DRCR Protocol AO. She's the current chair of Protocol AO and one of the leaders of the network. She is also very active in ASRS. She is also very active as a past president of Women in Ophthalmology. I'm very privileged to have her on the show. She's going to talk to us about one of the network's active protocols, Protocol AO, the use of home OCT for monitoring neovascular macular degeneration. Before I start the conversation, I'll give you some brief bio on Dr. Weng. She earned her undergraduate degree from Northwestern University and did her MD and MBA degrees, both with high distinction from University of Michigan. And then she did her residency at the Wilmer Eye Institute at Johns Hopkins and a surgical retina fellowship at Bascom Palmer Eye Institute at University of Miami. She specializes in managing complex retinal conditions, including retinal detachment and medical retinal conditions such as neovascular macular degeneration we're going to be talking about today. And she has been very active in different innovative research ideas, including use of home OCT for wet macular degeneration. As I said, she's the protocol chair for the DRCR Retina Network, and gene therapy and telemedicine on medical economics and remote monitoring. She's also co-edited the influential book, A Woman in Ophthalmology, A Comprehensive Guide for Career and Life. And she also remains very active in academia through teaching, leadership, and high-impact publications. We also had the privilege of having her just a few months ago in Vancouver as one of the keynote speakers for the Canadian Ophthalmological Society, and she did a fantastic job in Vancouver and gave us some fantastic lectures during the COS meeting just a few months ago. Without further ado, this is Dr. Weng. Hi, Christina.
Kevon, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I love your setup. It looks so professional.
You look very professional as well.
Thank
Very
you.
nice
Thank
seeing you.
you.
Very nice seeing you.
Nice to
Lovely to have
see
you on the
you.
Retina channel.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. So you may be familiar with the format of this podcast,
Yeah.
Christina.
Yes.
We'll get you. This is less of a journal club today because the article is in the making. But we
Yes.
have the chair of the protocol on the show, which is fantastic. It's an honor to have you. So we'll maybe get your insights into the protocol AO as our conversation goes on.
Fantastic. I'm excited. Thank
And
you
I
again for
realize,
having me.
my pleasure, my pleasure. I realize I'm probably the last thing between you and your weekend, so I won't I
It's
won't
okay.
keep you here too long.
It's a fun way to end it out. So, hey, it's been a crazy week. This is like the highlight. Don't worry.
Fantastic. So, Dr. Wang, I mean, a lot of our listeners are familiar with your work and all you do for our community. Just giving some background to listeners and viewers. You are the DRCR Protocol AO chair, which is a study in works. It is still ongoing and investigating the use and application of home OCT machine for following patients with neovascular AMD. And you've been very active, as someone who participates in this study. I know you're very, very supportive of your investigators. I really appreciate that. And then you're also very active in other parts of the community. You're one of the leaders, the next generation leaders of our community. Really, you're very active in the ASRS, all the symposiums and all the meetings that you've been one of the emerging leaders in our field. So I appreciate you being here. Let's talk about Protocol AO. And like any good story, tell us where it began. How come you folks came up with this idea? What was the background?
Well, first of all, Kayvon, great to see you. Great to see you recently for our DRCR Retina Network investigator meeting in Chicago. That was a real treat. And then very shortly before that in your hometown in Canada. So, it was really, really a lot of fun. And I have to come and see you, I guess, at the end of every week for a confidence boost. So I really appreciate that introduction.
Well, it's a
Uh,
pleasure to see you as well.
but, I think to really start to understand why Protocol AO came to be, I think we have to back up just a little bit. And even preceding Home OCT, think about where we are today in 2025. And so much of medicine is about extending our care outside of the clinic walls. And remote monitoring has really revolutionized medicine. And I think we're actually a little bit late to the game in terms of ophthalmology because it's everywhere around us, right? You and I both take care of a lot of patients with diabetes, for example. Look at how continuous glucose monitoring has improved care for our millions of patients with diabetes mellitus. And then even with our heart patients, we see a lot of elderly patients with a history of atrial fibrillation, for example. They've got cardiac monitoring now on
Yeah.
watches and devices, and that's really facilitated those detection of the arrhythmias in near real time. And so I really think shifting the concept of remote monitoring into ophthalmology, whether it be through home OCT for the retina or even through measurements of intraocular pressure and really realizing the
Hmm.
fluctuations that can happen in parallel with circadian rhythms. It's fascinating, but we're limited right now by the fact that we actually have these amazing technologies like OCT, but patients can only benefit from them when they actually come into our clinics or they start noticing changes. And we know
Hmm.
that for almost all diseases, and wet AMD is certainly one of them, that the earlier we can detect those diseases, the better the outcomes. And so that's where the home monitoring technologies like home OCT have really sort of blossomed into interest and ways we might be able to look at studying them and then applying
Hmm.
them into real disease. So that's really, I think, the first step. The second step came with the innovation that we have made with our field with home OCT. I have no financial relationships, by the way, with No Television. I am the protocol chair of Protocol AO for the DRCR Retina Network, but otherwise have no ties to the device or the company. I just think it's really exciting. And
Hmm.
you're familiar with it because you're one of our investigators in this study. Thank you so much. And
Happy to
have been a
be.
very active recruiter. But this is a 10 by 14 by 17-inch device. It's about 16 pounds. And it does what you would imagine, what the name sort of implies, which is it allows patients to self-capture high resolution 3 by 3 home OCT scans from the comforts of their
Hmm.
kitchen, their bedroom. And these are high quality scans, as you know, Kayvon. You've seen these in
Hmm.
your patients who were randomized into that arm. And it's
Yeah.
artificial intelligence supported. So there's a cloud-based platform that does a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of interpretation of the images. And that allows us to really get an idea, a snapshot of how the patient is doing, not on a monthly or every other month basis, but on a daily basis, which I think is so cool. And we're looking to
Hmm.
study this device in Protocol AO.
Yeah, yeah, that's fantastic. And the footprint of this device is amazingly small. Like it fits on a kitchen table and it doesn't take a lot of space. I wonder why our own office OCTs are so big when you look at this one, you know?
Yeah. It's funny you say that because I also was curious about how they were able to make it so compact. And happened to speak with the CEO and some of the leadership of the company during a couple of meetings ago with the DRCR Retina Network. And they showed me a photo of some of their earlier prototypes. They were so much larger, Kayvon. And so it really goes to
Mm.
show, like with every iteration and improvement of the technologies, they have been able to work to get this into a portable state. And I'll tell you, I've got one patient in AO who went to South Africa for travel
Mm.
for 3 weeks and took his machine with him, 16 pounds. He said it was
Wow.
just one of his
Wow.
carry on pieces of luggage. So
Oh,
I
that's
think that
interesting.
it is, and it's fascinating that in a very mobile world today, a very globalized world, that people are able to take this with them as well.
That's fantastic. So they can take it.
Yeah.
I'll remember that from my patients. So they're allowed to travel with it. Oh, interesting. So
Yeah.
what do you plan to achieve from the study? What are the primary objectives of the study? I for listeners and viewers, these are neovascular AMD treatment naive, and you're essentially grouping them into standard of care to an extent versus home OCT. So what are the primary objectives of this study?
Yeah, it's a great question. So first, there have been several smaller studies already done that have validated the home OCT AI algorithm and
Mm-hmm.
support its feasibility. We know patients can oftentimes obtain those scans in 45 seconds or less, and so really, it's prime time for a large-scale prospective trial to be done, and that really was the impetus behind formation of Protocol AO and our work with developing this trial over the past couple of years. And in my opinion, it's really one of the most exciting trials that's happening right now. And for the alphabet soup of DRCR Retina Network trials, you can remember AO for OCT. And I just want to take a moment to also thank you and your colleagues and patients at the Toronto Retina Institute for not only being a very actively recruiting site for this, but one of the DRCR Retina Network's first ever sites outside of the United States. So we really
Oh,
appreciate,
it's a privilege to be part of the RCR Retina Network
we
and to
really have
work with
enjoyed
people
it.
like yourself. It's really an honor.
You're very kind. And you've been so encouraging and supportive as the site PI there. And I'm so glad we've gotten to work together in that capacity. But the way it's designed, Kayvon, is Protocol AO is a multi-center randomized clinical trial. It's going to randomize 600 eyes with treatment naive wet AMD, like you said, 1-to-1, either into a home OCT guided treatment arm or into treat and extend. And what I really love about that, I just want to repeat that latter part, is that it's comparing to treat and extend, which is what the vast majority of us, whether you're a United States retina specialist, a Canadian retina specialist, or elsewhere in the world, we know that that's what over 90% of retina specialists are doing today globally. We know that from the ASRS PAT survey. So I love that it's comparing
Mm-hmm.
directly with something that we really do in the real world. And this is a
Mm-hmm.
2-year study. All eyes are going to receive faricimab, and the co-primary outcomes include the mean change in visual acuity and the number of injections from baseline through 2 years. So it is a
Mm-hmm.
2-year study. We're also looking at a number of secondary outcomes like the number of visits, development of fibrosis or macular atrophy. Really
Mm-hmm.
interesting has been watching fluid dynamics, what happens between those injections when the patient leaves your office. We've never been privy to that
Mm-hmm.
information before, and it's been fascinating to
Yes.
see. And then also some patient reported outcome measures and socioeconomic metrics as well. So that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
the 10,000-foot view, and happy to dive in more if you'd like to hear more details.
Yeah. So one interesting that I know about this study is that you're allowed to see patients every day, as you were saying, and you monitor the amount of fluid they started with. And then you may not treat it necessarily if it's going the right direction or the machine doesn't, prompt you for it. And I found it interesting because in our day-to-day practice, because we don't see the patients for a month or two or three, any fluid is dangerous for us. Like if I see anyone with any fluid with AMD, I get alerted. I probably will not tolerate that. But this machine allows us to watch it and see it go away sometimes or stay the same. And so I think I've told you about my patient, one of my patients in the study, who didn't get her second injection for 6 months,
Mhm.
and that was interesting. So, are you seeing more of that in fluid that can be monitored so closely daily, essentially, and
Yeah.
and not treated?
I love that you've mentioned that because I think that and it really just goes to show how, intricately knowledgeable you are of the protocol because that's not the direct outcome that we're seeing or that we're looking at here, but it
Hmm.
is buried in this study. And I think actually it's one of going to be the most important learning from this study is fluid tolerance. As you and I
Hmm.
both know, Kayvon, this is a shifting needle in our field is how
Yeah.
dry do we need to keep these patients? And traditionally, we have really, I think, all aimed to keep patients as dry as possible when it comes to wet macular degeneration, especially with intraretinal fluid versus subretinal fluid. But even subretinal fluid, I would say the vast majority of us have tried to treat until dry. What this study does is you're absolutely right. The patients in the home OCT arm are being guided in terms of treatment by the alerts that the home OCT fires. So when it detects a certain amount of fluid, it'll alert you, and then you'll bring the patient in. You'll do an in-office OCT scan, which represents ground truth in this study, and you'll treat them
Hmm.
accordingly. And so the alert in this study is actually set to 10 nanoliters. So they actually have to
Hmm.
pass 10 nanoliters 3 consecutive scans in a row, or they have to hit 10 nanoliters above that. So 20 nanoliters for most patients a single time. And if that's the case, they're triggered. We call that a fluid alert. And you might be wondering, well, why are they allowed to have 10 nanoliters of fluid? That was very carefully selected based on
Mm-hmm.
all the previous studies that I mentioned earlier that have been done outside of the network. We learned that 10 nanoliters seemed to be a critical pivot point separating artifactual fluid, which this, home OCT is very sensitive in detecting any sort of hyporeflectivity. And it really helped to differentiate between artifactual fluid and clinically meaningful fluid, which is why that was
Mm-hmm.
set. But you're right. What we see is that there are patients maybe with 5 nanoliters of fluid, 2 nanoliters of fluid. That represents real fluid, and that doesn't trigger alert in protocol AO. But here's what's fascinating is exactly what you said. We have seen, because we're now able to look into the patient's eye basically on a daily basis, we see that oftentimes there's these like very subtle oscillations that happen on a daily basis between
Mm-hmm.
injections. And just because you see it blip up one day does not mean that it's going to necessarily trend upwards. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
times you see a little blip and then they go back down to zero, and they have a little blip and they go
Yes.
back down to zero. And that's been so fascinating to see. And you're absolutely right that we will see at the end of this study if that is a valid point of or a fluid threshold that we can tolerate. And I do think it's going to
Mm-hmm.
help make us feel more comfortable or less comfortable with
Yeah.
tolerating small stable amounts of fluid. So I love that you brought that
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, it's fantastic. How about the other eye? Are you paying attention to the other eye? Because it's obviously a good target. You have one machine that looks at both eyes. Are you looking at that as well?
Yeah, we are. So it's a great question. And as you know, we know from a lot of the natural history studies and studies like, like CAT, that most patients, when they present with wet macular degeneration, they do so unilaterally. About 75% present unilaterally. But we also know from studies like PROCON, for example, that patients a lot of times in that fellow eye will convert over time. It's about 10
Yeah.
to 15% chance, right? Over per year that the other eye will convert. So we wanted to take advantage of the fact that we know over a 2-year study that they're going to have a small proportion of fellow eyes convert. So we are running an ancillary study as well, since we're asking patients to scan both eyes. Those eyes that are currently dry macular degeneration are enrolled in this ancillary study, and
Mm-hmm.
they're going to be scanned every day. And then we're going to utilize that data as well to see what we can learn. Were there any signals
Yeah.
before their conversion?
Mm.
Detecting right at the point of conversion, is that going to help with overall outcomes? So far, all the retrospective data that we have suggests that yes, that is the case, that the earlier you detect things, the better the
Yes.
eventual outcomes are going to be. So I'm really excited about that part of the study as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Maybe between the two arms, they're probably going to detect the second eye in the home OCT arm sooner, so they do
Yeah.
better compared to the other arm or not. So
Yeah.
interesting to look at.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Very nice. So now let's talk about the hindrances. This is obviously something that, the device, the tech savvy level of the user. What are some roadblocks in this study or things that you hope to tackle and hope to get easier so the device could potentially become more widespread after you do the study? What things are roadblocks right now?
Yeah, so it's interesting because when I first heard about the machine, the common roadblocks for me, at least, that I was concerned about were patient feasibility and compliance, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I always say it's like a treadmill. If you buy a treadmill and it sits in the corner of your house, nothing's going to happen, right? You actually have to
Mm-hmm.
use it. And so I wanted to make sure that patients were actually going to use that. And luckily, with all the other studies that have been shown, we've seen great usability, great compliance, and great feasibility, even amongst this demographic of patients in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. So I was very
Yes.
encouraged by that. But we still obviously have safety guards built into this study. So, first of all, we really
Mm-hmm.
do a thorough job in really identifying and patient selection to make sure we've got patients that are really committed to scanning every day if they end up being randomized into the home OCT arm. And so far, we've had great compliance. And what's really nice about Notel Vision is they also have a branch dedicated to monitoring compliance to make sure that patients are scanning on a daily basis, or they'll reach out and call
Mm-hmm.
them. And
Mm-hmm.
similarly, from our standpoint, you and I are also very busy. When we get those alerts through our email or the portal, we need to tend to those right away, or it's a
Mm-hmm.
lost cause. So no television actually helps us stay on track as well. If I haven't responded to an alert in 3 days, they will contact me. So I think that's actually been really well controlled so far in terms of that aspect. I mentioned
Mm-hmm.
earlier it only takes about 45 seconds to scan, and I find that
Yes.
patients really aren't too bothered by that, and they love being able to play an active role in their own care. I
Mm-hmm.
think some of the real world types of challenges that we still face are a few, and I'll mention these here. Number one, this is a disruptive technology. It's going
Mm-hmm.
to it's going to force us to reevaluate some of the workflow streams that we currently have, right? So
Mm-hmm.
now, for example, I'm sure you're experiencing it too. When those alerts come, I need to have someone on my team contact the patient to bring them in, right? When they have a
Mm-hmm.
fluid alert. That's a change in workflow that we haven't had to do before. And I need to find space in my clinic for that to happen. So that's
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that we've seen. Reimbursement and feasibility is a really big one. You know that the machine was actually FDA cleared in spring of 2024, but is not yet commercially available.
Okay.
Notel Vision is actually working actively with Medicare to achieve and obtain a code so that this is going to be covered as
Mm-hmm.
a technology that can be integrated into patients' care. And that's a really important step because without it, we're not going to have this to be able to
Yeah,
use widely, right? So that's a
that's
really
right.
important one. You got it. And then
Yeah.
also, I'll just mention lastly, this is in the back of my mind too. And I think a lot of people's minds is when you use artificial intelligence to guide someone's treatment like this, what are the medical legal implications? And maybe
Mm-hmm.
you guys don't worry about that as much in Canada, but for sure in the United States, that's a big issue for us is what happens if something's missed by the artificial intelligence algorithm, who's
Yeah.
has fault, with regards
Yeah.
to that. So
Yeah. We
those
have
are
our
some of the
share
real
too.
ones. I figured it was such, so I didn't want to make
Yeah.
any
Yeah.
assumptions.
No.
um, but those are some of the things, Kayvon, that we need to sort out as a field. And
Mhm.
while we do need to look at those closely, I'm convinced that if we find through Protocol AO that this is beneficial for patients, I know that as a community we will work together to find a way around these obstacles.
Yeah. And let's talk about potential uses in the future. Let's see this, we deal with all these roadblocks to figure things out. Do you think there's a role for it in the future for monitoring diabetic retinopathy, for example, or RVOs, or do you see that happening at some point in the future potentially?
I certainly do. And it's interesting because a couple of years ago, they actually had a very small study, not conducted by us or the network, but there was a small study looking at the use of home OCT for diabetic macular edema. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
very natural for us to start thinking, hey, what can we use this for beyond wet macular degeneration? And I think the answer to
Mm-hmm.
that is a lot. We need more
Mm-hmm.
study in those areas. And I think a lot of it's going to hinge on what we find from Protocol AO, which is the largest study to date, looking at the use of this technology in this way. But I certainly agree with you that for RVO, for diabetic macular edema, this is going to play a really critical role, especially Kayvon, in light of some of our longer durability therapeutics that are just around the bend. Things like tyrosine
Yeah.
kinase inhibitors and gene therapies and the port delivery system. That's
Yes.
really a perfect match to something like this because right now, even though we have medications that may allow patients to go 6 months, let's say, in between their
Mm-hmm.
treatments, we don't feel comfortable without checking in on
No.
them sooner than that, right? Because we don't know
Yes.
how they're doing. Now, what if you had the home OCT and it could tell you that the patient has zero fluid? You'd feel a lot more
Yes.
comfortable letting them really stretch that out to every 6 months. And I think that's a win-win for our busy clinics as well as for the patients because so much is
Absolutely.
involved with coming in to see us.
Absolutely. Or maybe even for glaucoma, if you can do
Mhm.
RNFL, they could follow that as well. That would be nice.
Yeah, that would
Yeah.
be amazing. I think the
Yeah.
the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
So really
So
exciting.
is Notel the only company that makes this, or there are other companies coming on board?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, there's definitely at least a handful of other companies that are also exploring home OCT and their own version of these devices. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think any of them are as far along as Notel has
Mm-hmm.
come in terms of commercialization. But certainly, we need to keep our eyes open for other devices that are similar to emerge onto the market over the next, I would say, decade. But again,
Mm-hmm.
I think all of the challenges we've discussed are going to be sort of common threads, no matter what company or group is developing the device. And I hope that we will have a united front in being able to sort of tackle all those issues as a
Yeah.
community.
Very nice. Just for listeners, you mentioned that already. Neither you or myself have any financial conflict or interest in Notel or any of these companies, but we are definitely supportive of them. Um, Wonderful, Christina. Anything we missed? Anything you want to add to your wonderful work and the leadership you're doing for Kaleo?
No, I appreciate the opportunity. I mean, I think really just emphasizing that I truly think that the home OCT device may lead to a paradigm shift in the way that we care for one of our most common diseases. And Kayvon, we talk about personalized medicine all the time, right? I think this is
Mm-hmm.
something that can truly get us one step closer to that. And I mean, imagine a day when you inject a patient when and only when their fluid occurs, right? It's like a
Mm-hmm.
true PRN. It's like PRN 2.0. And that's
Mm-hmm.
the appeal of home OCT and the reason we stand to learn so much from studies like DRCR Protocol AO. And that involves both extremes. It involves the patient that you said that didn't need an injection for 6 months. Well, guess what?
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have to keep unnecessarily injecting or loading them during that period. They were just able to immediately jump out that far. On the flip
Yeah.
side, you and I, I'm sure, also have patients on the other extreme, who require injections every single month. We see that their fluid needs to still be tended to, and they might even have fluid
Absolutely.
the whole month in between. And for those patients, it might also tell us, hey, maybe we need to try a different type of treatment because it's not getting you completely dry, and maybe
Yeah.
you need to be coming in, slightly sooner than that. So for all types of patients, I think this is going to have really great application and potential.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to our results coming out when the study wraps up. And thank you again for your leadership, for your availability for this, and everything you do for our community, the retina community worldwide. And thank you again for coming on the Retina Channel podcast.
No, it's such an honor to be here after all these years. I've been following you all along. So, I mean, congratulations on so many episodes, Kayvon, with your podcast. It's always fun to listen to. You have great guests, and I always learn something new from you. Thank you also again for just being such an active part of Protocol AO. I am excited that we're getting very close to the end of recruitment, and I can't wait to speak in the future, hopefully with results next time.
Yes, absolutely. The pleasure has been mine. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you so much. Take care.
All right, friends, this wraps up episode 90 of the Retina Channel podcast with our wonderful guest, Dr. Christina Weng from Baylor College of Medicine. I look forward to the results of Protocol AO when it comes out. And as someone who also participates in that protocol, I'm especially eager to learn about our results. And with that note, wish you all wonderful last few weeks of summer until the fall season, and until the next episode, I wish you all the best. Until then, take care.